Welcome to Style Lesson 9. My name is Dr. Burkett. This lesson illustrates how to write long sentences that are clear, shapely, and do what sentences ought to do. Teach and delight readers with relevant information, wisdom, and good style. Why care about the shape of sentences? Why do these writers care? The structure of every sentence is a lesson in logic. John Stuart Mill holds that shape partly produces logic and clarity. Sentences in their variety run from simplicity to complexity, a progression not necessarily related to length. A long sentence may be extremely simple in construction, indeed must be simple if it is to convey its sense easily. Sir Herbert Reed thinks shape helps convey meaning and helps readers understand and enjoy sentences. For King Solomon, shape helps to know wisdom and communicate instruction. How much better to get wisdom than gold, to choose understanding rather than silver. These are all excellent reasons to take an interest in shape. Let's start with two rules of thumb, rules that help writers control sprawl and write clear, readable sentences. First rule, get to the grammatical subject of the main clause quickly. Stated negatively, avoid long, abstract subjects and long subordinate phrases and clauses preceding the main clause in most cases. Second rule, get to the verb and its object quickly. That is, avoid interrupting the subject-verb and the verb-object connections in each clause in most cases. These two principles of style prevent many kinds of sprawl, guide efforts at local revision, and coordinate with the other style lessons, such as make main characters subjects, make important actions verbs, and get to the point quickly in each sentence, paragraph, and section. Four common problems frustrate the two rules of thumb and, in turn, readers and reasons for writing. Here's a brief list of what to avoid and how to revise. First, avoid long introductory elements, such as long subordinate phrases and clauses placed before the main independent clause. Instead, get readers to the grammatical subject of the main clause quickly, usually within 8 words. Second, avoid long abstract subject phrases that prevent readers from understanding the point. Instead, choose short, concrete subjects, preferably characters. Readers feel frustrated if they have to keep a 6-word subject in mind while waiting for its verb. Even worse, if readers misunderstand, then the writer loses. Third, avoid interrupting the subject-verb connection that prevents readers from getting to the point in the predicate. Instead, keep subject and verb close together. Readers like to find the sentence's verb immediately after the subject, and not trudge through a phrase or clause before finding the verb. Fourth, avoid interrupting the verb-object connection. Instead, keep verb and object close together. Readers like to get past the verb to its object quickly. Here's the point. It's the writer's job to help readers. And readers read most easily when you quickly get them to the subject of your main clause and then pass that subject to its verb and object. So avoid long introductory phrases and clauses, long subjects, and interruptions between subjects and verbs and between verbs and objects. Consider this bad sentence illustrating the first common problem. After centuries of strife between orthodoxies and heresies, religious wars over sectarian issues, and the multiplication of denominations founded on differing interpretations of Holy Writ, sacrament, morality, and tradition, breathe. The West is no longer the Christian West in any recognizable guise. Instead, get to the subject quickly rather than after a long subordinate clause. And here's my revised sentence. The West is no longer the Christian West in any recognizable guise. For, after centuries of strife, and so forth, placing the long subordinate clause after the clear main clause. The original sentence has a long introductory element that causes much confusion, all the more so because it is the first sentence in Chapter 1 of this book. The writer asked the reader to keep in mind the long adverb clause, a nearly impossible request. Instead, by applying the rule of thumb, I draft a more readable sentence by reversing the syntax and writing a short main clause before the long and complex adverb clause. In this way, I apply the two rules of thumb. Get to the subject of the main clause quickly and get to the verb and object quickly. By the way, my sample bad sentences in this presentation are quoted from the source footnoted at the bottom of the page, a book that is interesting but also frequently breaks principles of good readable style. This next bad sentence illustrates the second common problem. As a result, it is unreadable so that the author does not help the writer. This slow Christianizing of countries previously non-Christian or decidedly anti-Christian in the case of the former communist bloc, at the same time that secular market economies are also taking hold, cannot be explained simply as a result of Occidental precedences and influences. Instead, I should choose a short, concrete subject, preferably a character. So let's try this. Our observers cannot explain. That's my subject, verb, object. And then I can continue. The causes of this slow Christianizing process of countries previously non-Christian, and so forth. I write a clearer, more readable sentence by creating a character, that is, observers, to serve as the subject. In this way, I apply the two rules of thumb, getting to the subject of the main clause quickly, and getting to the verb and object quickly. Consider this third bad sentence illustrating the common problem of separating subject and verb. The postmodern movement in Christianity, whether we like it or not, arrives at a time when Jesus' command to his followers to make disciples of all nations, the so-called Great Commission, is having a profound impact beyond the geographical zone in which Christianity was spawned and grew to maturity. Instead, the writer should keep the subject and verb close together. So we might try this. Whether we like it or not, the postmodern movement in Christianity arrives at a time when Jesus' Great Commission to his followers to make disciples of all nations is having a profound impact, and so on. I write a clear, more readable sentence by deleting the phrases separating subject and verb in each clause. In this way, I apply the two rules of thumb, getting to the subject of the main clause quickly and getting to the verb and object quickly. Consider this fourth bad sentence illustrating the common problem of separating verb and object. Global Christians are, here's the separation, as Jesus called them to do, laying down their lives for fellow believers in the most extreme situations. Instead, the writer should keep the verb and object close together, as this revised sentence. Global Christians are laying down their lives, as Jesus called them to do, in the most extreme situations. I write a clear, more readable, revised sentence by deleting the phrases separating verb and object. In this way, I apply the two rules of thumb. Get to the subject of the main clause quickly, and get to the verb and object quickly. Writers can revise sprawling sentences in four ways: cut, chop, change, and coordinate, to use some pruning metaphors, to reduce sprawl and follow our two rules of thumb. Writers can revise in these four ways to enhance clarity and grace. 1. Cut long relative clauses down to adjective phrases. 2. Chop subordinate clauses into independent clauses. 3. Change long relative clauses into modifying phrases. And 4. Coordinate long clauses and parallel phrases. In the rest of this lesson, I will illustrate how to perform these principles of local revision. Writers can cut long relative clauses down to concise adjective phrases by cutting out relative pronouns and related words. This sample bad sentence interrupts the subject-verb connection with a long relative clause beginning with the relative pronoun which, colored cardinal. To revise it, I cut out the relative clause and revise it as a concise adjective phrase as follows. And I'll only read just part of it. Latin American Pentecostalism is not only undermining the centuries-old alliance between regional politics and Catholic clergy, and so forth. In this way, I follow my two rules of thumb. Writers can chop down ungainly subordination, revising as an independent clause when needed. This sample bad sentence has an extremely long subordinate adverb clause, colored cardinal. It prevents readers from getting to the subject of the main clause quickly. Such a long introductory element frustrates readers, for readers want to get to the main point in the main clause fairly quickly, but they cannot do what the writer asks, namely, to keep the whole adverb clause in mind while waiting to get to the main clause. To revise, I simply chop the subordinate clause, turning it into an independent clause, thus helping the reader understand both long clauses. The revised sentence reads, American churches have experienced increasing tension, and so forth. And the second clause, but global Christians are laying down their lives, and so forth. Now we have a readable sentence. Writers can extend sentences clearly and stylishly using 3 types of modifying phrases. Moreover, writers can revise vague relative or adjective clauses with these same 3 modifying phrases: resumptive modifiers, summative modifiers, and free modifiers. In the 3 slides that follow, I quickly illustrate these 3 modifying phrases. For more guidelines at a slower pace, please see Style Lesson 9b for how to form resumptive, summative, and free modifiers, an important lesson in stylized sentences. You can create a resumptive modifier in 3 steps: in the main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon. Select a key word, a noun or noun phrase from the main clause, and then start in a positive phrase with the key word plus the word that, or a verbal. For example, in my original sentence, I have, many colleges are making a return back to classical education by emphasizing critical skills. I can extend the sentence with a resumptive modifier, starting in cardinal. Skills that enable students to identify, analyze, and evaluate the features of literature and arguments. The long sentence is clear, stylish, and highly readable, due in part to the resumptive modifier. You can create a summative modifier in 3 steps. In the main clause with a comma or a dash, not a semicolon, that would only create a comma splice. Then create a word or phrase, usually a noun, to sum up the sentence, and then start in a positive phrase with the key word plus that, or a verbal. The original sentence, many colleges are making a return back to classical education by emphasizing critical skills. I extend the sentence with a summative modifier in cardinal. A change that re-emphasizes the virtues and rigor of the liberal arts. The long sentence is clear, stylish, and highly readable, due in part to the summative modifier. Likewise, you can create a free modifier in 3 steps. In the main clause with a comma, usually not a dash, think of a verbal such as a participle to add action, and then start a modifier with the participial phrase. In our original sentence, many colleges are making a return back to classical education by emphasizing critical skills. I can extend the sentence with a free modifier in cardinal, freeing classes from a myopic focus on content to include critical processes of reading and writing. The long sentence is clear, stylish, and highly readable, due in part to the free modifier or concluding participial phrase. It is called free because it is highly mobile and may be placed just about anywhere in the sentence. The last 3 slides have given a very quick overview of resumptive, summative, and free modifiers. For more, please see Style Lesson 9b, titled Stylized Sentences, illustrating how to write long sentences by changing vague relative clauses into stylish modifying phrases. Coordination is the foundation of graceful sentences and is harder to create than good modifiers. When well done, coordinate clauses and parallel phrases are not only pleasing to read, but also help the reader perceive similar ideas in similar structures and see the progression of the argument. Structures are coordinated when they have similar grammatical forms in parallel sequence, such as clause with clause, prepositional phrase with prepositional phrase, and so on. In the Declaration of Independence, for example, Thomas Jefferson writes a main clause followed by 3 noun clauses starting with that. The 3 noun clauses match. They have parallel grammatical coordination, including the linking verb are, Moreover, Jefferson applies what is called the rule of three in writing in his three coordinate noun clauses and three main terms in the last clause, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The rule of three suggests that what comes in a set of three is more satisfying, more effective, and easier to remember than groups of larger numbers. By the way, Jefferson's happiness translates Aristotle's key term eudaimonia from his Ethics, meaning human thriving and flourishing in pursuing one's vocation. The point of coordination is that this fine style lets you extend the line of a sentence more gracefully than just tacking on one element to another. When you can coordinate, try to order the elements so they go from shorter to longer, from simpler to more complex, as TJ's sentence does. Fine coordination is a principle of elegant style, the topic of Style Lesson 10. In summary, writers write more shapely and readable sentences when they follow two rules of thumb. Get to the subject of the main clause quickly, and get to the verb and object quickly. These principles help writers recognize and revise four common problems we've already discussed. Again, please see Style Lesson 9b for how to form the three modifying phrases, an important lesson in stylized sentences. Keep writing, and see you next time.